The Vorthak Empire had ruled the galactic technology sector for over 3,000 years. Their crystalline towers stretched across 17 star systems, each one a monument to their intellectual superiority. They had quantum computers that could predict the movement of entire solar systems, biotechnology that could regrow planets, and most importantly, an ego the size of a small moon. Ambassador Klexthon adjusted his ceremonial robes as he floated into the Galactic Council chambers. His 4 eyes gleamed with that special kind of arrogance reserved for beings who had never been wrong about anything, ever. The other species representatives were already seated around the massive circular table, each delegation looking appropriately intimidated by Vorthak presence. "And now," announced the council speaker, a blob-like creature from the Gelatin Nebula, "we have a petition from the species known as humans, from the planet Earth. They request membership in the Galactic Council." The chamber erupted in what could generously be called laughter. The Zephyrian delegation made sounds like dying wind chimes. The crystalline collective created a harmony of tinkling that probably passed for humor in their culture. Even the usually stoic fungoid empire managed a collective spore sneeze of amusement. Klexthon raised one perfectly manicured appendage. "My fellow beings," he said, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension usually reserved for explaining basic mathematics to houseplants, "surely we cannot be serious about admitting such a primitive species to our ranks." The human representative, a tired-looking woman named Ambassador Williams, cleared her throat. "With respect, Ambassador Klexthon, humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies on 47 worlds, and developed sustainable fusion technology." "How quaint," Klexthon replied, examining his claws with theatrical boredom. "My species was building Dyson spheres when yours was still figuring out fire. Your technology is 7 centuries behind our most basic innovations." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Ambassador Williams' jaw tightened, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. "Perhaps," Klexthon continued, warming to his favorite subject, "we should conduct a simple demonstration. A test of technological prowess, if you will, something even your species might comprehend." "What kind of test?" Williams asked, though her expression suggested she already regretted the question. "Navigation," Klexthon said with a smile that would have made a shark nervous. "The most fundamental skill of any spacefaring civilization. If humanity can prove they possess even rudimentary navigational capabilities compared to Vorthak technology, then perhaps we might consider your petition." "And if we fail?" "Then Earth remains under quarantine for another century while you work on becoming slightly less embarrassing to the galaxy at large." The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Williams looked around at the other delegates, seeing nothing but expectant faces waiting for humanity's inevitable humiliation. She activated her communicator with a sigh. "This is Williams to Earth Command. We need our best navigator out here. And I mean our absolute best." 3 hours later, Captain Jake Morrison docked his cargo hauler at the council station. The ship looked like it had been through a blender fight with a junkyard and lost. Rust spots decorated the hull like some kind of abstract art, and at least 3 different types of duct tape held various panels in place. Jake himself looked like he had stepped out of a truck stop circa 2035. 3 stained coveralls, 5 days of stubble, and the kind of weathered face that suggested he had seen everything the universe could throw at him and was not particularly impressed. "You've got to be kidding me," Klexthon muttered as Jake shuffled into the council chambers, leaving a trail of motor oil behind him. Klexthon gestured grandly toward the massive view screen that dominated one wall of the council chambers. The display showed a sleek, silver vessel that looked like it had been designed by angels with advanced degrees in theoretical physics. "Behold," he announced, "the Nexus Prime, the most sophisticated navigation AI in the known galaxy. It utilizes quantum processing matrices that can calculate 17 million possible routes simultaneously while accounting for gravitational fluctuations, temporal distortions, and the quantum uncertainty principle itself." The assembled delegates made appropriately impressed noises. The ship's hull seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy, and sensor readings showed computational power that could run a small civilization. Jake unwrapped a sandwich and took a bite. Looks shiny, he said around a mouthful of what appeared to be processed meat product. The challenge. Klexthon continued, ignoring the human's casual indifference. Is simple. Navigate through the Maelstrom Nebula, a region of space where the very fabric of reality becomes unstable, gravitational anomalies that can crush a ship in seconds, temporal distortions that can age a crew to dust in minutes, quantum storms that turn matter into mathematical equations. Sounds rough, Jake agreed, pulling out a bag of chips. Rough? Klexthon's four eyes widened. Captain Morrison, over 300 ships have been lost attempting to navigate the Maelstrom. It is considered the most dangerous navigational challenge in the galaxy. Yeah, well, I once had to drive through downtown Detroit during rush hour, so I figure I can handle some space weather. The Zephyrian delegation began taking bets. The odds against humanity were running about 15,000 to 1, which the Crystalline Collective considered generous. Your ship, Klexthon said, consulting his datapad, is called the Rust Bucket. She's got character, Jake replied defensively. And her navigation system has never let me down. And what might this navigation system be called? Betty. Betty? Yeah, Betty. She's got personality, that one. Klexthon activated his personal scanner and pointed it at Jake's ship. The readings made him frown. Captain Morrison, your navigation system appears to be... He paused, checked his scanner again, and blinked all four eyes in sequence. This must be some kind of mistake. What's wrong? Asked the council speaker. According to these readings, their navigation AI is operating on computational principles that predate our earliest spaceflight by several centuries. The processing power is so primitive that my scanner can barely detect it. Jake shrugged. Betty's not much for showing off. She prefers to let her work speak for itself. The Fungoid Empire delegate released a cloud of spores that probably indicated amusement. Perhaps the humans have developed some kind of quantum stealth technology that makes their systems appear primitive? Or perhaps, Klexthon said with a smirk, they actually are that primitive. The betting odds shifted to 20,000 to 1. Gentlemen, ladies, and various other biological configurations, announced the council speaker, the navigation challenge will begin in 1 hour. Both ships will enter the Maelstrom Nebula simultaneously from opposite ends. The first to reach the designated coordinates at the center and return safely wins. Jake finished his sandwich and crumpled up the wrapper. Sounds good to me. Betty loves a good challenge. Back aboard the Rust Bucket, Jake settled into his pilot's chair, which appeared to be held together with hope and several different types of tape. The ship's interior looked like a cross between a garage and a very optimistic recycling center. All right, Betty, he said, pressing a button on what looked suspiciously like a car dashboard that had been bolted to the ship's control panel. Time to show these aliens what 700 years of human engineering can do. A familiar voice filled the cockpit, pleasant, professional, and with just a hint of barely contained sarcasm. In 500 meters, turn left. Not yet, Betty. We're not even in space yet. Recalculating route. Please make a legal U-turn when possible. The voice belonged to a 2023 Toyota Camry GPS navigation system that had somehow survived 7 centuries, 3 interstellar wars, and Jake's great-great-grandmother's legendary road trips across the American Southwest. Jake's family had a tradition of passing down practical things. While other families handed down jewelry or photo albums, the Morrisons passed down Betty. She had guided his great-great-grandmother through the chaos of early 21st century traffic, his great-grandfather through the first Mars colony expeditions, and now she was about to navigate through space phenomena that could theoretically turn a ship inside out. Betty, we've got some fancy alien computer that thinks it's hot stuff. Think you can show it how real navigation is done? I have been providing navigation services since 2023. I have guided drivers through Los Angeles traffic, New York construction zones. And that one time your great-great-grandmother insisted on taking a shortcut through the Mojave Desert during a sandstorm. A little space weather does not concern me. Meanwhile, aboard the Nexus Prime, Klexthon was running final diagnostics on his ship's navigation AI. Banks of quantum processors hummed with barely contained computational power. Holographic displays showed real-time analysis of 17 different dimensional matrices. Nexus Prime status report. All systems optimal. Ambassador, replied a voice that sounded like it had been designed by a committee of philosophers and theoretical physicists. I am currently analyzing 847,392 possible navigation routes through the Maelstrom Nebula, accounting for all known variables including quantum flux variations, gravitational distortions, and temporal displacement effects. Excellent. What is your assessment of the human navigation system? Based on passive scans, their AI appears to operate on principles so archaic that I am having difficulty comprehending how it functions at all. Its computational power is approximately equivalent to a basic calculator from their pre-space era. Klexthon allowed himself a satisfied smile. Then this should be over quickly. Back on the rust bucket, Vortex scientists had requested permission to scan Betty's systems more thoroughly. Jake had agreed, mostly because he found their confusion amusing. Captain Morrison called one of the Vortex technicians over the comm. We are having difficulty understanding your navigation AI's operational parameters. Our scans indicate it was designed for ground-based vehicular navigation on a single planet. That's right, Jake confirmed. Betty was originally designed to help people find the nearest gas station or avoid traffic jams. And you believe this system can navigate through the most dangerous region of space in the known galaxy? Betty's never steered me wrong yet. She got me through the asteroid belt of broken dreams, around the black hole of infinite bureaucracy. And that one time she navigated me out of a temporal loop that had me delivering the same cargo shipment for 3 subjective weeks. Your primitive AI has experience with temporal anomalies? Betty's voice cut in over the comm. I once guided a driver through a construction zone that lasted from 2019 to 2024. Time distortions are nothing new to me. The Vortex scientist paused. Did your AI just respond to us directly? I am programmed to provide helpful navigation assistance, Betty replied with digital patience. Your quantum processing matrices are very impressive, but they seem unnecessarily complicated. Sometimes the most efficient route is simply the most direct one. The Maelstrom Nebula looked exactly like the kind of place that ate spaceships for breakfast and used the wreckage as toothpicks. Purple and green energy storms crackled through clouds of ionized gas. Gravitational anomalies bent light into impossible shapes. Space itself seemed to be having some kind of existential crisis. Both ships approached the nebula's edge simultaneously. The Nexus Prime's sensors were working overtime, collecting and analyzing data at a rate that would have made a supercomputer jealous. Holographic displays aboard the Vortex ship showed thousands of variables being calculated in real time. Nexus Prime, initiate navigation protocol, Klexthon commanded. Beginning comprehensive analysis of entry vectors, the AI responded. Calculating optimal route through gravitational field fluctuations, accounting for temporal distortion effects. Analyzing quantum storm patterns. Estimated completion time for route calculation 14 minutes, 37 seconds. Meanwhile, aboard the rust bucket, Jake was reading a magazine about cargo hauling techniques while Betty hummed softly to herself. Betty, we're at the nebula. What's our move? In 500 meters, turn left. Left it is. Jake banked the rust bucket to port and flew straight into what looked like certain death. Purple lightning immediately began crackling around the hull, and gravitational waves that could have crushed a small moon washed over the ship. Aboard the Nexus Prime, alarms began sounding almost immediately. Ambassador, the AI announced, I am detecting massive computational errors in my navigation matrices. The quantum interference is exceeding my processing capabilities. What do you mean exceeding? You are the most advanced AI in the galaxy. The temporal distortions are causing my predictive algorithms to create feedback loops. I am attempting to calculate routes that exist, do not exist, and exist in a state of quantum superposition simultaneously. Klexthon watched his navigation displays with growing horror as 17 million possible routes became 17 million impossible routes. which then became a single route that led directly into the heart of a gravity well that technically shouldn't exist. Nexus Prime, simplify the calculations. I cannot simplify beyond optimal efficiency. My programming requires that I account for all variables to ensure passenger safety. Meanwhile, Jake was calmly following Betty's directions while his ship somehow threaded its way through space phenomena that violated several fundamental laws of physics. In 200 meters, turn right. Right turn, got it. The rust bucket sailed serenely past a temporal anomaly that was aging space dust into cosmic background radiation. A gravitational wave that should have pancaked the ship simply washed over it like water over a rock. Betty, how are you doing this? I am programmed to find the most efficient route to your destination. I do not concern myself with whether that route should theoretically be possible. Aboard the Nexus Prime, systems were beginning to overheat from the strain of trying to calculate the impossible. Ambassador, I am experiencing cascade failures in my primary processing cores. The quantum storms are causing my probability calculations to divide by 0. Can you at least follow the human ship? I cannot. Their navigation pattern defies logical analysis. They appear to be taking the most direct route, which according to my calculations should have destroyed them 17 times in the past 3 minutes. Smoke was now pouring from several of the Nexus Prime's quantum processors. The ship's hull was beginning to show stress fractures from gravitational forces that the AI couldn't predict because they kept changing according to rules that hadn't been invented yet. In 100 meters, proceed straight ahead, Betty announced cheerfully. Jake looked out the view screen at what appeared to be a wall of solid energy that was simultaneously purple, green, and a color that didn't exist in normal space. Straight ahead through the impossible energy wall. You got it, Betty. The rust bucket flew directly through the barrier as if it wasn't there, which it wasn't, except when it was, depending on which dimension you were observing from. Betty, I've got to ask. How do you know where to go? Captain Morris and I have been providing navigation services through the most chaotic and unpredictable environment in the known universe. You mean the Maelstrom Nebula? No, I mean Earth traffic during rush hour. The rust bucket emerged from the Maelstrom Nebula looking exactly the same as when it went in, which is to say like a flying garage sale that had somehow achieved sentience. Jake was finishing a cup of coffee and had managed to complete a crossword puzzle during the journey. 37 minutes later, the Nexus Prime limped out of the nebula. The sleek silver hull was now decorated with scorch marks, dents, and what appeared to be a small temporal paradox lodged in the port nacelle. Smoke was pouring from several vents, and the ship's quantum processors were making sounds like dying dolphins. The Galactic Council chambers erupted in chaos. The Zephyrian delegation was making noise like a broken wind instrument. The crystalline collective was vibrating at frequencies that probably indicated profound confusion. Even the usually stoic Outgunned Empire had released a cloud of spores that smelled like surprise. This is impossible, Klexthon declared, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Nexus Prime is the most advanced navigation AI in the galaxy. How did a primitive human system outperform quantum processing matrices? I wouldn't call myself primitive, Betty responded over the comm system. I prefer to think of myself as classically designed. But your computational power is 7 centuries behind our most basic systems. And yet here we are, Jake said, settling back in his pilot's chair. Betty, want to explain how you did it? Certainly, Captain Morrison. While the Vorthak navigation system was attempting to calculate all possible variables simultaneously, I simply followed the most direct route to the destination. But that's impossible, protested a Vorthak scientist. The Maelstrom Nebula contains gravitational anomalies, temporal distortions, quantum storms. Yes, Betty interrupted with digital patience. And I navigated around them when necessary, through them when safe, and ignored them when they were not relevant to reaching the destination. Ignored them? You can't ignore the laws of physics. I can when they are being unnecessarily complicated. In my experience, the most efficient route is usually the simplest one. Ambassador Williams stood up, a smile spreading across her face. Betty, can you explain your navigation philosophy for the Council? Of course. I was designed to help drivers navigate through urban environments on Earth during the early 21st century. This required dealing with traffic jams, construction zones, accidents, road closures, and drivers who believed traffic laws were merely suggestions. The Council speaker leaned forward. And how does this relate to space navigation? The principle is the same. Whether you are navigating through downtown Los Angeles or a quantum storm, the goal is to reach your destination efficiently and safely. The specific obstacles may change, but the approach remains constant. Analyze the situation, choose the most practical route, and do not overthink the problem. Klexthon was staring at his damaged ship with the expression of someone whose worldview had just been run over by a cargo hauler. But we have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Yeah, about that, Jake said, opening another can of soda. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't the most effective technology. Betty here was designed by humans who had to deal with chaos, uncertainty, and the kind of problems that can't be solved by throwing more processing power at them. What kind of problems? Asked the Zephyrian delegate. Well, for starters, my great-great-grandmother once had to navigate through 3 different construction zones, a traffic jam caused by escaped circus elephant, and a flash flood, all while the GPS satellites were down due to a solar storm. The chamber fell silent. And Betty got her home safely by taking a route through a shopping mall parking lot, 2 residential neighborhoods, and what technically counted as someone's backyard. Impossible, whispered Klexthon. That's what everyone said about the Maelstrom Nebula too, Jake pointed out. But here's the thing about humans. We've been dealing with impossible situations for our entire history. We don't have the luxury of perfect information or ideal conditions. We just figure out what works and go with it. Betty's voice filled the chamber one more time. If I may add something, the Vortex navigation system failed because it was trying to calculate a perfect solution to an imperfect problem. Space is chaotic, unpredictable, and frequently refuses to behave according to theoretical models. Sometimes the best navigation system is one that can adapt to chaos rather than trying to eliminate it. The formal ceremony admitting Earth to the Galactic Council was surprisingly brief, mostly because half the delegates were still trying to figure out how a 700-year-old GPS system had outperformed the most advanced AI in the galaxy. It is with great pleasure, announced the Council speaker, that we welcome humanity to the Galactic Council. Your demonstration of navigational excellence has proven that your species possesses the technological capability necessary for membership. Klexthon stood at his delegation's table, looking like someone had told him that mathematics was actually just an elaborate practical joke. I formally apologize to the human delegation, he said through gritted teeth. It appears that our assessment of your technological capabilities was incomplete. The apology was broadcast across 17 star systems, and within hours, Klexthon's humiliation was trending on every social media platform in the galaxy. The Crystalline Collective had already composed several symphonies about it. Jake found himself surrounded by representatives from various species, all wanting to hire him for their most challenging navigation problems. The Zephyrians needed someone to guide supply ships through their homeworld's perpetual storm systems. The Fungoid Empire wanted help navigating their spore-clouded nebulas. Even the usually self-sufficient Crystalline Collective was interested in learning human navigation techniques. Thanks, but I've got a regular cargo route to maintain, Jake said, politely declining most of the offers. Though if anyone needs something delivered to the Outer Rim, I'm your guy. Betty had become something of a celebrity herself. Scientists across the galaxy were requesting copies of her programming, which led to the awkward discovery that she was running on software that had been discontinued for 6.5 centuries and hardware that technically shouldn't exist anymore. I do not understand the fascination, Betty commented as Jake prepared to depart. I am simply doing what I was designed to do. The fact that other navigation systems are overthinking the problem is not my concern. Betty, you just humbled the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. That's got to count for something. I suppose it does demonstrate the value of practical engineering over theoretical complexity. Perhaps other species could benefit from designing systems that work in the real universe rather than in idealized mathematical models. Ambassador Williams approached Jake's ship as he was preparing to leave. "Captain Morrison, I wanted to thank you personally. You've changed humanity's standing in the galaxy." "Don't thank me," Jake said, checking his cargo manifest. "Thank Betty. She's the one who did all the work." "Where will you go now?" "Got a delivery to make to the mining colonies in the Centauri system. Betty says it's a pretty straightforward route. Only 17 black holes, 3 neutron stars, and a region of space where the laws of physics are apparently more like guidelines." "And you're not concerned?" Jake shrugged. "Betty's never steered me wrong yet. Besides, after navigating through the Maelstrom Nebula, everything else is just space weather." As the rust bucket prepared to depart, Betty's voice came over the station's communication system one final time. "Attention, Galactic Council. I have calculated the most efficient route for humanity's integration into galactic society. It involves treating other species with respect, sharing technology and knowledge freely, and not assuming that newer automatically means better." The council speaker activated his microphone. "Thank you for your guidance, Betty. We will take your recommendations under advisement." "You are welcome. Please drive safely, and remember that the journey is just as important as the destination." Jake fired up the rust bucket's engines and plotted a course for home. As Earth appeared on the main screen, Betty's familiar voice filled the cockpit. "In 500 kilometers, prepare for atmospheric entry. Destination reached. Welcome home, you magnificent idiots." Jake smiled and patted the dashboard affectionately. "Thanks, Betty. Same time next week?" "I will be here, Captain Morrison. After all, someone has to keep you humans from getting lost in your own solar system." And somewhere in the depths of space, the Nexus Prime was still trying to calculate the optimal route through the Maelstrom Nebula. Its quantum processors grinding away at a problem that Betty had solved with the simple philosophy of not overthinking it. Sometimes the old ways really are the best ways. Even if they are 700 years old and occasionally ask you to make a U-turn in the middle of a dogfight with space pirates.